This is Pod Strangely Warmed, a place where we tell the good Methodist story, where we have conversations that invite followers of Jesus to seek after that loving, just, and free world that God imagines for us all, and have a little fun along the way. Hi, and welcome to Pod Strangely Warmed. I'm Daniel Hawkins, your host, and we are back in studio this week getting ready for a new journey, a journey to the horizon. It's a journey we are making as an annual conference, and it's a journey we will be making here on the podcast. To help us on this journey toward the unifying conference at the end of September, we will be welcoming communities who will be leading us, not only this year, but in the years to come, in pursuing those 5 strategic priorities that the annual conference has laid out that will help shape and form the future of the Horizon Texas Conference. As we begin this conversation today, I'm incredibly excited to welcome Dr. Major Boglin and Reverend Andrew Fiser, the Director and Associate Director of Diversity and Cultural Engagement, the community that will help lead us as we pursue and embrace diversity. Thank you so much for being here on the podcast today.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity.
Glad to be here.
Amen. It's a joy to get to be together and a joy to begin this journey toward the horizon. Every time I think of going on a journey toward the horizon, I'm always thinking about driving west in West Texas toward New Mexico, because that's where I go to the horizon. But in many ways, our conferences are expanding toward the west in this. Dr. Boglin, as you jump into this work, you're new to the Unifying Annual Conference.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. All right. Trey, who's hanging in the background here, part of the communication team, this is day number 3 today as of recording, and there are a lot of folks kind of in this new space. I would love to get a window into what y'all are doing when you're not doing your professional job, right? When you are not working for the annual conference, whether that's been 2 weeks or any number of years under appointment. What does life look like outside of the official professional work that you are doing?
I love to play golf when I get the opportunity to, but I'm just kind of an avid reader and studier of concepts and ideas, and I'm always thinking of things that I can kind of explore relative to different maps of the world and how systems operate, and so that's kind of my thing. When I have time, I teach classes for graduate courses for Abilene Christian University in marriage and family therapy.
Okay.
When I have time, I don't have time right now. So my wife and I, we hang out together. We spend time together. She and I have been doing life together for 32 years now, and we have 2 sons. Both are adults and graduated from college and doing their thing. So,
okay. What's the best book you've read recently?
The best book I've read recently, I'm going to say Mary Frances Winters and the Winters Group, Racial Justice in the Workforce, I believe it is.
Okay.
Or Racial Justice at Work.
Okay.
Mary Frances Winters and her consultation team, the Winters Group. Fantastic read.
Very good.
Just
very good.
Well, I've got a almost 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and so they are a good part of our time right now is just raising them and having fun with them. 2 daughters, and we live in Grapevine, Texas, my wife and I with them. And I also really enjoy rucking, just gotten into rucking, so you put a backpack on, put some weight in it, and go for a walk.
Okay.
So just finished a 26-mile marathon walk with a pastor friend from Oklahoma.
Nice.
Oklahoma City not too long ago, and that was grueling and
I can imagine. Yeah.
also a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So reading.
I gotta know, how'd you get into rucking? How did that start? Because that just doesn't.
I had a friend invite me, like
Okay.
most things,
Like-
you have a friend invite you. And he said, hey, let's go take a try for this event, see if we can get up to 26 miles. And,
Okay.
One thing that has been on my mind is, as a middle-aged male, and particularly a clergy person, is it's difficult for us a lot of times to make friends. And so spending time on male friendships, I think, or any friendships whatsoever,
Sure.
but particularly male friendships, it's been something that's on my mind personally, but also for a lot of us. So just exploring that and
Nice.
reconnecting with friends.
Okay. When you're rucking, is there a specific weight that has to be in the backpack, or is it open?
So for 26 milers, it's like 10 to 20 pounds.
Okay.
Plus 3 liters of water, plus all your equipment. So it ends up being about 35 pounds.
Okay.
And then shorter rucks, people can go crazy with it.
Very good. I like to think of the only rucking or pseudo rucking I do. My kids are 13, 9, and 3, and so living the girl dad life is a real thing. Our 3-year-old is a big fan of getting half in our like mile and a half loop that we often walk. Getting halfway done and getting tired of
That's
riding
right.
her bike
Every time.
and say, "Carry my bike." I'm like, ugh. So that's the closest thing to rucking that I know is carrying the bicycle halfway back.
At least it's predictable.
It is predictable, yes, and it's a little awkward to carry, but other than that, it's all good. Could you help those who are listening to the podcast today or watching the podcast today get to know a little bit about your background and why you believe deeply in the work that you are going to help us as an annual conference do?
Sure, absolutely. So I spent the last 20 years in ministry as the director of a counseling center, as well as the family life minister for a church in just outside of Atlanta in Dunwoody.
Okay.
Before that, I was a professor at Abilene Christian University and did that for a while. And we moved to Atlanta in 2001 to take on that work. And in the interim, in 2010, I started working with churches to help them move into a more multicultural communities of faith. And so faith-based organizations, helping them to develop diversity, equity, inclusion as kind of processes and infusing it into their organizational structure. And so this is a real nice pivot for me in terms of instead of being the hired gun that comes in and does some things and then leaves and it's up to somebody else to continue it. This is an opportunity for me to come here, join Reverend Fiser and others in trying to infuse a bit more of cultural engagement and connection in the Horizon Texas Conference. And so I look forward to it. I think it's an exciting opportunity for myself, but also for the conference itself. And I think it will help us to be more equipped to bridge across differences and commonalities so that we can glorify God better.
Yeah.
I like to talk about John chapter 17, where Jesus, in his prayer for as he was going to the cross, he prayed that we might become one, that we might develop complete unity.
Yeah.
And that kind of complete unity only comes when everybody gets to show up who they are and use their gifts and their talents, and everyone, all stakeholders feel valued and fully engaged and respected. So I look forward to the opportunity to help us to develop the skills that we need to be more interculturally competent and bridge across those differences and glorify God. I need to say that the two things that Jesus says will come as a result of that kind of complete unity is that people will believe that Jesus was sent by God, and that people and the world will know that God loves them. So those are the two outcomes that we are hoping to be able to establish and pursue on this journey.
Those are profound and beautiful outcomes. Can you imagine the world, right? When everyone knows that they are deeply beloved children of God, and that we are one in our diversity, and we are one not because of some uniformity, but the unity comes in the midst of our diversity. And I love to hear your heart, and I love to hear this work is not new work for you. It's work you've been leading communities through, and you'll be walking alongside our churches as they do that work as well. This is not a work that happens in a singular moment.
No,
it's not bring in one consultant one time, have a couple of months of consulting work, and then it's all done and it's all perfect and all fixed, right?
It's not one off.
It's not one off. Our church has been multicultural for 15 years now, and we are here, but we're still longing to grow more. It's a work that we are consistently trying to engage more fully in.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Reverend Fiser. Share with us a little bit about what brings you to this work and what you believe your work will be as the associate director.
Well, so what brings me to this work is something that it's deeply a part of who I am as a person, deeply a part of my calling. So I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, which, if anybody knows their history and the Central High Crisis in 1957, that city and its community was deeply divided and is still influenced and impacted by the kind of white flight that occurred in the wake of it, and so my story of coming back into the United Methodist Church after a congregation that my family was a part of that was kind of a little family chapel. Coming back into the United Methodist Church happened out of a new church start in downtown Little Rock called Quapaw Quarter United Methodist that was started as a place where everyone was gathered and welcome. And so I felt really called throughout the years since then to really help foster spaces where difficult conversations can happen, because that space offered space for me personally to learn and grow and be faced with very challenging conversations about race and identity and who is in, and how to go about the work of anti-racist discipleship our whole life long, and do the hard work to make sure that we are going about the mission of Jesus Christ in the world effectively. Because if we don't have those blinders, the lenses checked out, we're missing a lot of what Christ has to show us, and would do and is doing in our world. And so we want to catch up with that.
Very good. Bishop Sines has said that one of our strategic goals as an annual conference is to pursue and embrace diversity. I love that it begins with the verb pursue.
Yes.
As you think about leading our communities in pursuing and embracing diversity, that we may be one, right? Where does that begin for most communities of faith? Recognizing that every church is different, every context is different, but where does that begin?
My experience has taught me that a couple of things need to happen. One, that people need to have opportunities for experience, for exposure, for education, and all that leads to empathy across differences, right? But in order to be able to step into those spaces that we want to, those conversations, it requires a certain level of intercultural competence. And so you'll hear me talk about intercultural competence a lot. It's developing the capacity to be able to bridge across differences and commonality. And we all need to develop that capacity. And having the capacity doesn't mean that you're going to use it. It just means that it's there and it's at your disposal. And so if your goal is to be able to cross over differences in order to connect, in order to pursue cultural engagement, then you have the capacity to be able to do that. The other thing that helps us with is it helps us to be more developmental in our equipping. So if someone is, and I'm just going to throw out some words here for a second. So if someone is in minimization as an orientation, they de-emphasize difference, then the level, what they need developmentally is different than someone who fully understands, embraces differences, is capable of adapting. We call it adaptation. So someone at those two levels, they need different training. They need different equipping. Yeah. And so by working from a model of intercultural competence or maturity, cultural maturity, however you want to say that, it allows us to be able to tailor training and equipping to their particular maturation. Yeah. And it takes better, right? People are less resistant when you are helping them developmentally, and we know that. Yeah. That's just kind of part of learning, right? Is the second grader doesn't need calculus, right? Right. That's just frustrating.
When if you tell the second grader you should do calculus, it's a self-defeating process before you ever get going.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's what we want to make sure that we're tailoring to people's level of kind of intercultural competence, comfort level with the different topics that and trainings that they need.
Andrew, where has this work? You told us about the Church of Origin, kind of that brought you back into the United Methodist Church. Where has this work of kind of cultivating cross-cultural competence, not just cross-racial competence, but cultures come in a variety of forms and fashions, right? The first 3 churches I served were all predominantly Caucasian churches, but the cultures of each church were radically different, and the cultures they represented within kind of our Texas context were radically different. Where has this kind of cross-cultural work or the work to develop intercultural competence shown up in your work as an appointed pastor?
So one I would point to is Edge Hill United Methodist in Nashville, Tennessee, that I served in during seminary, and then afterward started as the first integrated United Methodist Church in Nashville, Tennessee, in the heart of the Civil Rights Movement. 1967 is when it was begun, and it kind of evolved like many churches. Their community changed around them. Public housing had remained in their community, and it remained a predominantly black community there in public housing, but the part of the community that had been middle class black community had become gentrified and was now very much white and very affluent, alongside Music Row and other areas. And so part of the work we had to do is figuring out how to get to know our neighbors again, and reconnecting with our friends in public housing, creating spaces to build relationships so we might cross paths with one another. Yeah. So, one of the ways we did that was connecting with our kiddos who were now teens as a part of our mentoring program, an after-school program that was run by somebody from the community. And they said, we need a place for girls to have an after-school program, and we need this, and this. And so they kind of led us in creating those initial relationships to reconnect with our community so we could learn, okay, this is how we approach, and this is how we do it from a spirit of mutuality and equity, and especially in the initial decision makings about what the community needs. Let the community decide this is what we need. Was really important, and out of that flowed a free store for our community and an intentional living community, and spaces of hospitality there. And then, out of that, in local churches, I see, in the wake of 2020 and George Floyd's murder, lots of churches, of course, from all over the spectrum of the communities that they serve, rural, urban, suburban, have questions about how do we wrestle with these difficult conversations, and need equipping for that, knowing that people are all over the place in terms of their entry points to the conversation. Right. But then also, from a missional perspective, a lot of our churches have very changed neighborhoods from when they were built, either in 1840 or 1950s, 1960s, and 70s. And so demographic change can really be an important part of trying to figure out, well, how do we bridge the gaps between who's in the pews and who's in our community? How do we develop the wherewithal to do that well? How do we have the skill sets to do that? And who do we partner with to help us figure that out?
As you were describing where this has intersected your life and your work, I was struck by how both the work required individual and communal humility, right? Engaging it sometimes involved laying down power, right? Laying down, you named, we had to listen well to our community, right? Yeah. If the fruit of the Spirit is peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control, what would be kind of the fruit of the Spirit as it relates to communities beginning to engage this work, beginning to pursue and embrace diversity? If humility, I think humility, I'm just going to name mine, humility is one that we have to begin with.
Yeah.
What are some of those other kind of characteristics that communities who are in the beginning stages of pursuing, embracing diversity need to bring to the table?
I think the Micah 6:8 passage is a great place to start. That's kind of my the passage that resonates for me and how I want to show up in life. Yeah. Young man, old man, young woman, old woman, what God requires of you, right? He requires of you to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly before your God. Those three are critical, right? As we're having conversations, as we're having these challenging, difficult conversations about differences, about marginalization and power and privilege and how things are impacting us differently, as we're having those conversations, I need to be able to allow you or anybody else, whoever I'm talking to that's other than me, I need to give them the space to be able to make mistakes, to say some things that are that might be hurtful, understanding that their desire is to try to grow. So I need to be able to show mercy.
Yeah.
Right. At the same time, I see our social identities as neither good nor bad. So there's no moral equation to whether or not someone is marginalized or privileged. They're just different positions, and they have different requirements. But it's neither one's good or bad. They're just different.
Right.
So what is it? Luke 12:48 says that, but to whom much is given, much is required.
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm in a privileged position, then I want to be able to use that.
Right.
To bless others.
Right.
I want to be able to use that to help others to be able to get their needs met.
Yeah.
Right. That's the challenge for people of God. It's not that you're in a certain position. You are where you are.
Right.
What are you going to do with it? And how are you going to use that power and that privilege to help those who are historically marginalized, regardless of how their marginalization occurs, and not being able to see that as something's wrong with them or something's wrong with them, but let's see that we are different. We have differences and we have different experiences, and I want to value your experience. I want you to value my experience, and believe me. Right?
Yeah.
Believe me when I say this is my experience, and if it's an experience that I need some help with, help me with that. And let's continue to be merciful, to show grace, to so that we can be in those safe and brave spaces, to be able to continue to have a conversation and dialogue, and not running from that, right? Not deciding that your comfort is more important than our mission. Right?
Yeah. One of the things, the director here in Central Texas of Project Transformation, who was on the podcast not long ago, Lynn Rhodes, she talked about Project Transformation is one of those communities within our annual conference where we have done our best work historically related to cross-cultural inclusion and diversity work. And the phrase of hers that I just love is that we are here to create safe places and spaces for conversation, not necessarily comfortable ones.
That's right.
Sometimes you must sacrifice your comfort in order to move forward where God is leading and where God is calling. Dr. Boglin, I know you've been in Texas a while. You've also spent some time in Atlanta, so I don't know where your professional football allegiances lie. But as we were forming the Horizon Texas Conference, one of the kind of informal names that was bantied around for a while that we couldn't manage to get the trademark for, Jerry, why not, was the Dallas Cowboys Conference, right? Because we were just going to cover this whole area. And I think, Jerry, if you want an act of goodwill, it could work. I think it could. Anyway, I don't want people to miss when you named kind of our identities, whether privilege or not being valued one way or the, not being...
not a moral position.
It's not a moral position one way or the other, right? That idea, I think, is radically different than the way many people perceive these conversations happening within the broader culture. Right?
Yes.
But as the community that almost became the Dallas Cowboys Conference, I think sometimes to the Luke 12, too much is given, much is required. There are times when if you've got privilege, your call is not to be Emmitt Smith, but instead to be Moose Johnston, right?
Yes.
You're going to be blocking and making a way for somebody else. Use that gift you've got to create space for somebody else to thrive.
Absolutely.
And you can do your job incredibly well, and it leads to ultimately God's glory, but to somebody else's thriving through that. And so, thank you. That framing, I think, is really powerful. And I think whenever we talk about questions of diversity, especially in the way that our kind of society is charged currently, right? Especially in an election cycle and all of this, people can get on edge before they ever get started, right?
Sure.
And a preconceived notion that assumes a moral value and assumes a moral position based in one or the other, rather than your foundational
Neutrality.
assumption that they're morally neutral, right?
Yes.
I think is a really helpful thing. For our churches that are hearing us talk about this and hearing that this is a value of the annual conference going forward, who say, I'm in, but I'm nervous.
Yes.
What
That's what I say.
Okay,
Is
okay.
yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Be in and be nervous, and don't let your nervousness drive you away. Like you just said that your other podcast, what she said, that we don't have inherently a right to be comfortable, particularly not as children of God, not as people of God.
Yeah.
Right? That's not
Right.
That's not something that we see written in Scripture that you're going to be. He said you're going to have hardship.
Right.
Right? I had hardship.
Yeah.
You're going to have hardship. Yes.
And even when you walk through the darkest valley, you have nothing to fear because I am with you. Right?
That's right.
It's not that you're not going to walk through the dark valley. It's not going to be that things aren't hard, right?
Right.
Jesus said, come when you're weary and heavy laden, right?
Yes.
The assumption is you will be weary and heavy laden.
And that's part of the challenge is that because we have sought comfort, then that has kept us out of the game. To follow your motif there of football, it's kept us out of the game because we thought if I ever start to feel uncomfortable, the thing I'm supposed to do is run.
Yeah.
Because I should be able to do this and be comfortable. We didn't get this way. We didn't get to this place of polarization of people groups in a comfortable position, and we're not going to change it in a comfortable position. Yeah. We're going to have to be willing to let ourselves experience the discomfort for the sake of growing, for the sake of the benefit of being an authentic witness for God, right?
Yeah. Paul often uses the body of Christ as an image for the community of church, right? The human body. And when we think of the human body, if we only pursue comfort, right, we often end up in a place of unhealth.
Yes.
When we only pursue comfort. Let's be honest. It's Texas. It's hot. To go on a run is uncomfortable. To sweat is uncomfortable. And yet, is that good for our ultimate thriving, right? To eat healthy things rather than all the stuff that really tastes good is uncomfortable, and yet it's really important for our thriving. Discomfort can lead to our thriving, and so to your point, if you're nervous, say yes, let's go.
Yeah, and I would say this work is goal directed. So people have to be. That's why I point to John 17 or Paul's statement about his level of intercultural competence. I become all things to all, that I might win some, and I didn't change who I am, but I learned to see things from others' perspective. I learned to experience that from their perspective so that I could make that connection. And so we have to be able and willing and know that we have a goal, right? My goal is to be able to bridge across differences so that I can connect with others. I can be a more authentic witness. I can glorify God. So if I have a goal, then I want to be willing to do things and exercise some gifts so that I can equip myself to be able to accomplish that goal. And that's this kind of work. It always has to be goal directed. If you don't want to connect with anybody other than yourself, and then okay, then you don't join this work. You don't get in this game. But even Jesus said to us, right? What good is it that you love your family? You love those who love you. Like, what's that about?
Right. Yeah, you're doing easy work. Good job.
Right.
I mean, but
I'm
you're
glad
not done.
you do.
Right.
But if that's it, okay, I want to be empathetic toward people who are not like me. Right. I've got some social identifiers, and I want to be able to be empathetic to folks who show up as same-sex attraction. I don't. That's not who I am, but that's who somebody else is. I want to be able to show up that way. I want to be able to show up for the Korean community. I want to be able to reach across and be connected. I want to be able to reach across and be connected with people who are lower socioeconomically positioned and my middle income position. I want to be able. My life, my world is more blessed because of being able to bridge across those differences. And I'm still working at it. I'm still trying. I'm still developing greater understanding of the other. And I invite all of you to join Reverend Fiser and I on this journey. The horizon, it is beautiful, and it is the journey will be exhilarating. It'll be difficult at times and tough, but we can do it, and we can do it together. I just believe that.
Amen, and I do too. And I'm so thankful that Bishop Sines has made this a key directive for us as an annual conference. You just named beautifully that this work has got to be goal-driven, right? And you gave for us a number of your very personal goals as it relates to this work. You want to be able to connect to kind of anyone who God places in your journey. You want to be able to show up in that place and in that space. I know, as you said earlier, we're 2 weeks on the job at this point, and so know that this is not something that we're going to hold up 2 years from now and go, "Hey, your goals have changed." Caught you on video. But as you think about the bright work of the horizon, right? The future is bright. We have much good reason to be hopeful. What are some goals that you might have for us as a community that is the annual conference and the churches within it, as it relates to growing in our intercultural competence and our pursuing and embracing diversity?
I want us individually and collectively to be able to know that I am more interculturally competent in 6 months, in a year, than I am today. And again, that I have more skills, I have I've changed my mindset, right? Because this requires a change in mindset,
Certainly.
right? That Romans 12, right?
Yeah.
Right. This requires a change in mindset. So my mindset's different, my skill set's different, right? I know how to show up for people in a way that honors them, that is respectful of them. I understand my own cultural leanings, how I'm shaped, the way that my culture has taught me to think, and I recognize myself. We like to say that intercultural competence means that I'm becoming more culturally self-aware, more culturally other-aware, and I'm developing the skill set to be able to bridge across those differences. And that's the Pauline passage, right?
Yeah.
That I learned how to do that. And so I hope that we'll be able to do a lot of equipping. I hope that we'll be able to help people to have more experiences and exposures around differences. I think one of the sad things that I've seen in a number of faith-based groups that I've worked with is how I use a V analogy, and so at the top are the corporate events that we have, and you look at people's corporate events, and you see some diversity in their corporate events. As you grow down the funnel to their personal, where engagement, where experience, where real connection happens, is very homogeneous.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I would love to flip that thing around. Right?
Yeah.
I would love to have people come up to me and say, Doc, listen, my life was so homogeneous, it was not even funny when I got down here. All of the diversity, the differences of people in my life were all up here. I do this little exercise, and I didn't create the exercise, but a little exercise is, how diverse is your life? So you ask questions like, okay, how about your doctor? Is your doctor black, white, Asian, gay or lesbian, LGBTQ? How about your dentist? All right. How about your best friend? How about the people that come to your house? Right? Whose houses do you go to? Right? Right? You start, and you if you do it and you have a cup with marbles, with colored marbles, and the marbles represent different. And
how
you look
homogenous is your marble jar? Yeah.
Right.
Oh man.
It is like it's fascinating, eye opening.
Yeah.
For people to go, wow.
Yeah.
No wonder it's such a struggle for me.
Well, and I'd wonder what we see if you do that exercise generationally, right? Like I think of my kid's life, like my kid's marbles jar is, I mean, I'm a pastor of one of our most diverse churches. We're 1/3 Tongan and a mix of Caucasian and African-American across the rest of the church, right? But my marble jar may be more homogenous than
your children.
than I examined before 20 minutes ago, right? But my kid's marble jar is incredibly diverse.
That's right.
A couple years ago at an annual conference, the conference teachers were a group called Ministry Incubators, and they talked about like our generation being digital natives, where Gen Alpha and Gen Z are diversity natives, right? Like there's a nativeness to having a marble jar that is a diverse community of folks, rather than the more homogenous marble jars that were created by white flight and a number of other things over the course of our years. Dr. Boglin, thank you so much for your time today. Reverend Fiser, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for joining us today here on Pod Strangely Warmed. Until next time, I'm Daniel Hawkins. This has been Pod Strangely Warmed. If you enjoyed our conversation today, know that you can find us anywhere you find podcasts. On Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, any and all the places, we are there. So if you want to continue the good United Methodist conversation that you've been a part of today, find us, like us, rate us, review us, and share with a friend so that the good news that is happening right here in our own midst can amplify even more. What? You didn't tell me about barbecue.
My wife and I do barbecue. We make barbecue sauce and we call it Boglin's Best.
Okay. I gotta have some Boglin's Best because
Next time I come,
okay.
you got it.
Bottle right there.
That's it. That's it.